Okay, so this is the video for Hosea chapter or lesson 1, covering chapters 1, 2, and 3. So whenever we are studying a book of the Bible, the very first thing that we want to do is establish the context of the book, like the time frame and just the overall frame of the book. So we get this in Hosea in the first 2 verses, so that way we can just kind of start at the beginning. So verses 1 through 2 say, "The word of the Lord which came to Hosea, the son of Beeri, during the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and during the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, when the Lord first spoke through Hosea." Okay, so we'll just kind of start right there with just verse 1. So the word of the Lord which came to Hosea. So when we study the Bible, we always keep in the back of our mind to ask the questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. So anytime that you're opening up a scripture, whether you're looking at one verse, whether you're looking at an entire book, you want to ask yourself those 6 questions as you study to help you understand and glean what you need to from the verse. So with us asking the who, what we see is that this was the word of the Lord which came to Hosea. So our who is Hosea. So who, what? So what is our what? Well, it's the word of the Lord coming to Hosea. We probably need to go ahead. Yeah, we'll go ahead and read verse 2. Yeah. So the word of the Lord which came to Hosea, the son of Beeri, during the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and during the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, when the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, "Go take to yourself a wife of harlotry and have children of harlotry, for the land commits flagrant harlotry, forsaking the Lord." Okay, so our who is Hosea. Our what? This is a message from the Lord to the nation of Israel. Who, what, when? When was this message given? So the time frame is during the days of Uzziah and Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and during the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash. So when we look at the rulers of those kingdoms, what we see is that Jeroboam was the king of Israel, which is the northern kingdom of Israel. You had a northern kingdom and you had a southern kingdom, because after David's son Solomon was king, Solomon sinned against the Lord so much as king that he divided the kingdom, and he gave all the tribes to the north to a man whose name was also Jeroboam, but it was not this Jeroboam, it was a different Jeroboam. And then Solomon's son Rehoboam got to keep the southern part because of the promise that God made to David, that one of David's sons would always sit on the throne. So God kept his promise to David, but he made the kingdom much smaller and he divided it. And so now you have a northern kingdom, which is known as Israel in the Old Testament, and then you had the southern kingdom, which is known as Judah. So when you're reading your Bible and it seems kind of confusing, whenever God is talking about, usually, Israel, he's talking about the northern kingdom. And when he says Judah and Jerusalem, yeah, Israel or Samaria, northern kingdom. Judah, Jerusalem, southern kingdom. So you see those 2 separate kingdoms. And so Jeroboam was the last king that actually legitimately reigned in the northern kingdom. After him, there were other kings and other rulers, but it was like a dogfight. It was like a constant political turmoil, to where one king would, like a commander would rise up and kill that king, and so then he would make himself king, and that would last for like 8 months before someone else rose up and killed him and made themselves king. And so it was like all this constant that was going on until the day that the northern kingdom was taken into captivity by the nation of Assyria. So our time frame, it has to be set by the southern kingdom, who kind of remained intact. Okay, so Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. So this is how we know when our time frame was. So, and just because I have the map in my Bible, I know that was between 755 BC and 714 BC. So it was in that time frame. So that's our when. All that to say. So who, what, when, where. Where is the where? All right. So this word of the Lord has come to Hosea in the land of Israel. So that is our where. We're in the northern kingdom area of Israel. And who, what, when, where, why. Okay, so why is this message being sent? This message is being sent because the land is committing flagrant harlotry against the Lord. Okay, so that's our who, what, when, where, why. Now's our how. How is God going to get this message across through Hosea? He's going to get this message across by having Hosea take a life of harlotry and having children of harlotry. So that is just like right here at our beginning. That's just kind of giving us a picture of what this book is going to be teaching us. Okay, so let's keep going. So verse 3 says, "So he, Hosea, went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son." So Hosea did exactly what God asked him to do. God said, go take a wife of harlotry and have children of harlotry. And so Hosea went and he did that. And so if you have a study book and you were doing your homework, you saw that we cross-referenced some of these points with Isaiah and Jeremiah. And the point being that we researched was how God would often ask his prophets to demonstrate his word before the people. So it's like he would send them out with a word to speak, but he would ask them to physically and practically demonstrate what it was that he was telling them. And so for Hosea, this demonstration was to take a wife of harlotry and to have children of harlotry, to represent how Israel had been playing the harlot with other nations and other gods. And so, and two of the examples that we looked at with Isaiah was one of the things that God asked Isaiah to do was to remove his breeches and his shoes and to walk around butt naked and barefoot for 3 years. Yeah, butt naked and barefoot, to illustrate that God was about to strip bare the land of Judah because of how they were sinning against him. And Jeremiah, one of the things that he asked Jeremiah to do was to put a waistband, was to buy a brand new waistband and wear it and then take it off and bury it in the ground and leave it and then go back and unearth it and show that it was worthless in order to demonstrate how God had planted the people in the land for a purpose. And now they were worthless because they were no longer good for what he had planted them for, which was to show the entire world his glory. So, and they were not doing that any longer. So, this idea of God having his prophets demonstrate was nothing new. it was something that they each did. And when you look through the Bible, this, time after time, when God sent a message, the people were to also demonstrate. The prophets were to demonstrate. It's no different for us. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ, if you have surrendered your life to Him and you are born again, Spirit-filled, you have a calling on your life, and you have been called to preach the gospel. And not only in word, but also in deed. We are to demonstrate the gospel before other people, not just with our words, but with our actions, with the way that we live our life, with the choices that we make, in everything, in every way, no matter on our job, in our homes, in our church, everywhere. So that hasn't changed. That's still something that God asked His prophets, asked His people to do, to not just proclaim His word, but to live it out in plain sight for everyone to see. So let's keep moving. So he takes a wife, and he takes Gomer. And so because the next few verses are going to tell us how God specifically named the children of Gomer to represent something, I was just kind of curious, what does Gomer's name mean? And so I looked up her name, and it comes from the Hebrew word Gamar. That's my Southern translation, and it's spelled Gamar, and her name means to end, to come to an end, to complete, to cease. So I found it kind of fitting that was her name, because that is what's fixing to take place in the Northern Kingdom. That is what God is fixing to demonstrate and fixing to share through Hosea and Gomer's relationship. So I thought that was kind of fitting. All right, so verse 4. This message from the Lord came about 9 months later, because she has conceived, and now here is the child. So and these are children of harlotry also. So let's go back and let's talk about that. So Hosea marries a woman of harlotry and has children of harlotry. She did not stop being a harlot because she is now his bride. She continued in her harlotry, which means these children that are being born to Hosea, he doesn't even know if they're actually his DNA, okay? Because she is still living that lifestyle, okay? That hasn't changed. All right, so the first child is born, and it is a boy, it's a son. And so verse 4 tells us, and the Lord said to him, name him Jezreel, for yet a little while, and I will punish the house of Jehu for the bloodshed of Jezreel. And I on that day, and I will put an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. On that day, I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. Okay, Jezreel means God sows, or God scatters. Okay, so you can think of a person who is going out and sowing the seed. They just kind of have it in their hands and just kind of just throw it out there. Okay, so this son's name is going to be Jezreel, and we're going to see that used in two different ways through the book of Hosea, actually in this lesson. So it's pretty awesome. Okay, so this usage of Jezreel is talking about how God is going to scoop up the people of Israel, and he is going to scatter them out of the land, and they are going to be scattered out among all these nations that they have played the harlot with. So he's going to scoop them up, scatter them out. And he says, and I will punish the house of Jehu for the bloodshed of Jezreel. So the story of Jezreel goes all the way back to King Ahab and Jezebel. Now, King Ahab was not a good king, and Jezebel was not a good queen. She was a prophetess of Baal. She was just flat out evil. And in Jezreel, there was a man who had a vineyard. And Ahab wanted that vineyard. He wanted that land. But God was very specific when he divided the land. When they left Egypt and entered the promised land, that land was divided and it was appointed to certain families. And that land was to stay in that family. And so the man who owned the vineyard was not going to sell it to Ahab. There was no amount of money that Ahab could offer him to cause him to give up his inheritance. And so Ahab just pouted about this. He just went back to his little castle and he just had a little pity party and he pouted over the fact that the man would not sell him the vineyard. Well, in comes Jezebel. And Jezebel's like, what's your problem? Why are you pouting? And he tells her the story. And so Jezebel, being Jezebel, is like, well, nobody's going to tell me no. And you definitely, you're not telling the king no. So she has the man killed for the vineyard. So she has him murdered. And then Ahab swoops in and takes the vineyard. And this was God's final straw for this line of kings. And so God sends in Jehu and anoints has Elisha anoint Jehu as king over Israel and gives him the authority and the power to go in and destroy Ahab and destroy Jezebel and to remove them from the position of authority that they held over the northern kingdom. And then now he and his family take the reign in accordance with the word of the Lord. But here beeth the problem. With this, Jehu was also to restore the people back to the Lord. Jehu did not do this. Jehu continued in the same manner as all the other kings before him with the idolatry and the worship of false gods, of images, and all the gods of the other nations. And he did not bring the people back to the Lord. So now it's his turn. So he says, I'm going to punish the house of bloodshed and I'm going to put an end to the house of Israel. He says, on that day I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. Here's the cool thing about the valley of Jezreel, because this points to a near thing that is coming very soon, but it also points us to something that is yet to happen, but is also coming one day. And the valley of Jezreel is the exact same place as Armageddon, which is spoken of in Revelation chapter 16, verses 12 through 16. So this is a pretty significant place in the world. So it holds a lot, and it has we need to keep our eye on Jezreel, on the valley of Jezreel. So, all right, anyway, so that's our first son. Now, verse 6, then she conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. And the Lord said to him, name her Lo-Ruhamah, for I will no longer have compassion on the house of Israel, that I would ever forgive them. But I will have compassion on the house of Judah, and deliver them by the Lord their God, and will not deliver them by bow, sword, battle, horses, or horsemen. Okay, so this is really cool. All right, so her name, Lo-Ruhamah, means no compassion. That's what her name means. So God is letting Israel know through Hosea and Gomer and through this child that he is done showing mercy and showing compassion to the northern kingdom of Israel. And so before we feel too bad about this, we have to remember that God has been showing them compassion for 200 years. 200 years. He's been sending in prophets. 200 years. He has been blessing in spite of their rebellion and forsaking of him. He has still been getting their back when they found themselves in a bind. The Lord has been showing them compassion and grace and extending mercy for 200 years. And they still refused him. They still rejected him. They still did not choose him over all the other gods of the land and over all of the material things that just shined. Okay? So, but he says, I will have compassion on the house of Judah. Now remember, that's the southern kingdom. And so here is the really cool thing, a little preempting of Hosea. Okay, so this message is taking place somewhere in the 750 BC time frame. So in 722 BC is when the Assyrians come in and scatter the northern kingdom. So after they do that, they of course want the southern kingdom too. And so they send threats to King Hezekiah. Remember, we talked about him at the very beginning. To King Hezekiah. And they pretty much mock Hezekiah. And, and they tell Hezekiah, it's like, look, your God was not big enough to save the northern kingdom, because, he's completely oblivious that the God of gods is the one that allowed him to come in. And so anyway, so he actually is like giving these threats to Hezekiah and is mocking the Lord. So now here comes Hezekiah, and he has a choice. Hezekiah can call on Egypt to come help him. Hezekiah can, call on Babylon to come help him. Hezekiah can reach out to Moab or to any of these other surrounding nations to come to his rescue. But Hezekiah does not do that. Instead, Hezekiah takes the words of this king of Assyria and he lays it at the altar of God. And he's like, God, look what he is saying about you and about your people. Will you save us? And so Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, is prophesying at the same time that Hezekiah is king. And so when the king of Assyria is making these threats, the people hear this, okay? And everyone is starting to shake in fear and get concerned. And so, but Second Chronicles, verse 32, I believe it is, yes, Hezekiah makes this stance before his people. He says in verse 7, be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be dismayed because of the king of Assyria, nor because of all the horde that is with him. For the one with us is greater than the one with him. With him is only an arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles. So Hezekiah goes to the Lord. And so then we go further down in 2 Chronicles 32. And we pick up with verse 20. And it says, but King Hezekiah and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, prayed about this. And they cried out to heaven. And the Lord sent an angel who destroyed every mighty warrior, commander, and officer in the camp of the king of Assyria. So he returned in shame to his own land. And when he had entered the temple of his God, some of his own children killed him there with the sword. So the Lord saved Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, and from the hand of all others. And he guided them on every side. So way back in 750 BC, 50 years before it happened, God told them, I'm going to have compassion and I'm going to have mercy on Judah and I'm going to save them. And that's not going to happen by battle. It's not going to happen by war. It's not going to be by their soldiers rushing in. It is going to be supernatural to where they know that it was me. The Lord himself sends an angel in. And Hezekiah and the men of Judah never even have to set foot on the battlefield because the Lord does all the fighting for them. This is our God. The very same God that Hezekiah prayed to and trusted in is our God. He wants to fight our battles. He wants us to trust him with our fears, with our situations, with whatever they are. He wants us to lay them at his feet and let him guide us on every side. Can we do that? Is there something in your life right now that you just need to lay it at the foot of the cross? You just need to put it in the hands of Christ And you just need to trust that he's going to fight for you, because he will. Okay, he will. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so she conceives again, all right, in verse 8. So now we have about another 9 months later. When she had weaned Lo Ruhamah, she conceived and gave birth to a son. And the Lord said, name him Lo Ami, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. Okay, so here's the last, I believe the last son that is mentioned. I'm not sure. We're only in chapter 3. So haven't it's been a while since I've read the whole book. So anyway, this child's name is not my people. That's what this child's name means. Now, the northern kingdom of Israel was not his people because he didn't want them to be. God wanted them to be his people, and he wanted to be their God, but they continually rejected him and continually went after other gods. And so now he has just said, okay, if you don't want to be my people, you're not my people, and I'm not your God. And so he lets them go. Pretty heart-wrenching. And it was hard for him to do this, because remember, 200 years, he showed mercy, and he showed compassion, and he cried out and called out for them to come back to him, for them to come to him, and they refused. Okay? But here is the mercy of our God. Here is the grace of our God. Here is the love of our God. The very next verse, verse 10, begins with, yet, the number of the sons of Israel will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And in the place where it is said to them, you are not my people, it will be said to them, you are sons of the living God. You and the sons of Judah and the sons of Israel will be gathered together, and they will appoint for themselves one leader, and they will go up from the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. I told you it was going to come up again. Okay, so God pronounces his judgment, but he follows his judgment with a reminder of a promise that he made to Abraham, beginning in Genesis 12, 1 through 3, then confirmed again in verse 7, and then confirmed again in Genesis 22, 15 through 18, and so many places in between. God confirmed this promise to Abraham. And so this promise was an unconditional promise that was made to Abraham, not on any merit of Abraham and not on any merit of any of his children. And so God is reminding the children of Israel right then. He was like, look, I am dealing with you right now because I have to, but I have not forgot my promise. I will keep my word. Your descendants will be like the sand of the seashore, and one day you will be my people again. One day you will be called sons of the living God. Even so, this one day I am going to reunite the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah, and you will once again be one nation with one God and with one king. And that day, great will be the day of Jezreel, the day that God gathers from the four corners of the earth, from everywhere that the children of Israel have been scattered, and he sows them back in the land that he promised Abraham ages ago. Great will be the day of Jezreel. So, pretty awesome stuff. So this is 30 minutes on chapter 1. So instead of this being like a our video. I'm just going to stop right here with chapter 1, and then I will record and post another one for chapters 2 and 3. So this is such a good study. I'm so excited that you are diving into this with me. And if you have already started in Hosea chapter 4, I hope that you are seeing how important it is for you to know the Lord through his word. Okay? See ya next time.